I'm doing, everyone. How are you all doing? Lord willing, this is leaving day, heading home for me today, and plane is doing shortly, but I wanted to get one final podcast in. And leaving is an appropriate theme for today's podcast because we've come to the end of the story in Luke 24, the very end of the book of Luke. And it concludes or ends in a surprising fashion for those early disciples. And I want you to try to put yourself into their minds and hearts for just a few minutes as we look at this. It's not the ending that they expected, but I also want you to know this is not the actual end of the story. Luke is writing volume one and volume two, so we're actually going to pick up the story in Acts 1 to find a word of encouragement for us. But let's read what happened at the end of Luke chapter 24. It said that when he, Jesus, had led them out to the vicinity of Bethany, he lifted up his hands and he blessed them. And while he was blessing them, he left them and was taken up into heaven. Let's just stop there for a second. He left them again. I want you to think about what that moment must have been like. Remember, we started the section with a group of men whose faith was on very shaky ground. They were doubting, they weren't believing, they didn't understand, they were fearful. And then there was joy in their hearts when they got Jesus back again. He rose from the dead, even though they should have known, but for whatever reason, they didn't get it. I'm not being hard on them. If I was in their shoes, I probably would have been exactly the same way. But Jesus returns, and they were filled with joy once they finally believed it. They put their hands into the holes in his hands. They put their fingers in there and in his side and in his feet, and they fed him a meal, and they could see that Jesus was truly resurrected from the dead. And this is the game changer. This is what makes the story unique and true, is the fact that Jesus rose from the dead. And everything you think about the Bible and everything you think about Jesus and even about life itself hinges on that truth that Jesus rose from the dead. But here we are at the end of the chapter, and Jesus is in the process of blessing them. I bless you, however he did it, hand out, whatever, praying. And he just rises up and he disappears again and he's gone. Now, you might expect them to be shaken all over again, but they weren't. It says when they worshiped him, then they worshiped him. They understood clearly that Jesus was God himself who had come in the flesh because they would only worship God himself. Then they worshiped him and they returned to Jerusalem with great joy. In the course of our series, they went from frightful, doubting, struggling people to worshiping and great joy because they had been with the risen Jesus. And then they stayed continually at the temple, praising God. That temple, the very place where the leaders were that had put Jesus to death, they had the courage to go back in and worship there. That's how Luke ends the story. But is that the end of the story? It's really not the end of the story. I'm going to try to make this work. I think I told you the other day, I am without a mouse here, and so trying to make all my technology behave itself has been a challenge, and I'm having a challenge right now as we speak. And where did we all go? Here we are. So, sorry for that little technical challenge, but I'm determined to get this in. So here we are in Acts chapter 1. Let me see if I can get this to scroll down. Luke picks up the story again. He starts with Jesus being with them. He said to them, "It is not for you to know the times or dates the Father has set by his own authority, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you." Luke is giving even more of what Jesus said to them. and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and all the ends of the earth. And after he said that, he was taken up before their very eyes, and a cloud hid him from their sight. And they were looking intently up into the sky as he was going, probably wondering what is going on. We just got Jesus back. We've only had him for 40 days. When suddenly two men dressed in white stood beside them. These are angels. Two men dressed in white stood beside them. And they said, Men of Galilee, why do you stand here looking into the sky? This same Jesus who was taken up from you into heaven will come back in the same way you have seen him go into heaven. I have to tell you that this, according to Titus, this is our blessed hope, that Jesus has risen from the dead, that he has ascended to heaven, but he is returning again one day. And we, since the time of Jesus, excuse me, have been living in the last days. Somebody asked me at the supper last night, is this the last days? Is Jesus about to return? There's wars and rumors of wars. And I said, I don't know. I said, we won't know. There's been other periods of time in history where there were wars and rumors of wars and lots of crazy stuff. Thinking of just World War II itself, when there was madness all over the world. And people back then thought, well, Jesus must be returning. Jesus could return. He could return before I finish this podcast. Or he might wait 1,000 years, or he might wait 2 days or 4 days. We're living in the last days, but we live in anticipation that Jesus is going to return. At any moment, Jesus could return here to the earth. And that is a blessed hope. I've told you many times on this podcast, I love politics. I love following politics. I get mad at politics. I get irritated with them, sometimes fascinated by them. Some politicians I like, some I don't like. For whatever reason, I've always liked politics since I was a young man. Our parents weren't, that I know of, very political. I don't even know what party they voted for. I don't remember them ever talking about politics, but for whatever reason, I had an interest. But whenever I look at politics and the direction this world is going, and I look at it apart from Jesus, it's discouraging. But when I look at the world going on around me, understanding that Jesus is going to return, he's coming back, and he's going to make all things right when he comes back. That gives me great hope. So our story ends on Jesus leaving, but we are reminded in Acts chapter 1 that that truly is not the end of the story. The story goes on. The story goes on through the people that became followers of Jesus and the people after them that became followers. And if we could look at the very end of the book of Acts, you would see it just kind of tails off. He's just telling the story of Paul and others and missionary journeys and new churches and stuff going on. And he just suddenly just the story ends with no conclusion because the story is ongoing. You and I are part of the story of the book of Acts. It's a story that will be concluded when Jesus returns. So I look forward to that. I hope you look forward to that. And also look forward to, Lord willing, being with you on Wednesday. And I look forward to, Lord willing, being home tonight at some point from this trip. It's been a great trip. It's been glad to see everybody, but also anxious to go home and see my family. So hope you have a good couple days. Between now and then, the Lord bless you.